also working really hard at is being able to communicate that Houston is a destination for innovation, not a flyover city, to our limited partners, to our network of national VCs and beyond. So we're working really hard to make sure that our story is being told in the proper way.
Welcome to another episode of Forging the Future. And startup ecosystems need infrastructure to thrive. And today on Forging the Future, I'm talking to two impactful leaders from one of Houston's notable venture funds, HX Venture Fund. And I'd like to welcome Sandy Guitar, Managing Director, and Aleece Hobson, Venture Partner from HX Venture Fund, to the show.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for having us today.
Absolutely. This is going to be some fun.
Yeah.
So maybe tell me a little bit about how you got your start in venture capital, Sandy, and private equity.
Sure. Most people's stories is like mine. It's not a straight line. After college, I went into consulting and actually ended up in a career that I wasn't loving, that I was decent at, but not loving. And I was looking for something different. And my boss at the time had a husband who was a founder of a venture capital fund of funds called Knightsbridge. And she asked me if I'd be interested in trying for that. I did. And that was, when I got my start in 2000.
And where was that? Because I don't detect the Houston accent.
No, well, this is even more bizarre. This particular fund of funds was in Oklahoma.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's a very odd story. But for 5 years, or 5 to 6 years, I worked at Knightsbridge with really a world-class team. And I learned the ropes from the bottom up. There I met partners who later became co-founders alongside me of Weathergage Capital, which was another venture capital fund of funds formed in 2006. So I've been with Weathergage ever since, and basically seen the movement of the venture capital fund of funds world and the venture world broadly from 2000 on. The happy story is that's also where I met my now HX Venture Fund partner, Aleece. So I'll let her tell that story too.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, how'd you get here?
Yeah, so how did I get here?
What's your journey?
Well, my original background was more in the marketing consulting area, but I was looking for a change and was able to connect with Sandy almost a decade now on LinkedIn of all places. And Weathergage was looking for an investor relations manager based out of Houston. So we were doing the remote working, distance, connectivity before it was really a popular, commonplace thing. Zooming before Zoom was cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So Sandy and I were the Houston team for the Weathergage partners, and it was a fantastic experience. And the opportunity for HX Venture Fund presented itself. Sandy had moved over to HX Venture Fund, and they were looking for somebody to lead what we call our activation strategy, which is really engaging the Houston ecosystem and helping founders and corporates connect alongside of our venture partners. And I was really excited at the opportunity. I'm a native Houstonian. Which I know is a bit rare.
My wife's a native Houstonian.
Yeah.
Oddly, my wife and all my children are natives, but I got here in 1981.
I'm a first generation Houstonian, but I am a native Houstonian.
Nice.
And so the prospect of helping Houston and helping the community here and people growing their businesses and just really connecting others was really exciting for me. And just on a personal note, so I'm super excited to be part of HX Venture Fund and helping Houston.
Well, why did Houston need help? I mean, if we think about kind of looking back a little bit about what sparked this whole innovation conversation in Houston, what was happening 10 years ago that we really needed to have this?
I think we have almost all the ingredients for a very high velocity innovation ecosystem. We have the founders, we have the ideas. We have the ideas both around molecules as well as around electrons. Importantly, we have this amazing diversity to ourselves. And then we have world-class life sciences, world-class space, world-class global corporations all here on our back door. We simply have had previously a dearth of venture capital, which we consider the high octane sort of ingredient to the venture capital engine.
The gas.
The gas. And,
Exactly right.
you know, it's a well-told story that when Houston found out that we weren't even in the top 20 of consideration for Amazon's headquarters some 4 or 5 years ago, it was a great wake-up call. And one of the things I love about Houston is our resilience. When we found that out, instead of turning away from it, we turned right towards it. And this is before my time, but many leaders here in Houston formed an innovation roundtable and determined that this was a problem we could and should solve. The exciting news is, since the birth of that concept, and HX Venture Fund being formed in 2018, and many other startup development organizations coming around that, including Softtech, we have gone from, $200 million in venture capital 2 years ago to $2 billion in venture capital more recently, and on the rise. So that's the kind of S-curve that venture likes to see.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been a lot of money in Houston and Dallas and in Texas in general, and there's been a wildcatter spirit of like, hey, I'm going to throw some money in the hole in the ground and see what happens, right? And so,
Exactly so.
basically trying to redirect that toward technology and energy and, like you said, space tech, et cetera. We like to solve big problems in Houston.
Right,
You know.
exactly.
A little odd that it took Amazon rejecting us to kind of wake people up, because as a founder 35 years ago, I could see that there was a gap,
Right.
both with money and also the SDOs. There weren't really any
That's
SDOs
right.
before that, the startup development organizations.
Right.
And so it's kind of a combination of things. And I think
Yep.
we've made a lot of progress since then, but a ways
I think
go.
that story that LA told us, that Gwyneth Paltrow and Dana Settle told us last year, is an important one. This is the story of LA's growth, right? So LA was formerly a flyover city for at least a decade. And I think today most people would acknowledge it's certainly its own venture hub. What did LA do to get there? Well, what Gwyneth and Dana told us was that they were very intentional as a city to use their power of media to help attract venture capitalists to the community and to make it easy for VCs to engage in LA. Well, fast forward the movie, that certainly worked. And I think when you apply that to our own story, the lesson learned is stick to what we are great at, use what we're great at to bring in superior venture capitalists to our community, and allow the rest to take care of itself.
When I speak to founders, which is pretty much on a daily basis, a large number of them, especially those who have been able to scale and progress well in Houston, a lot of them say, we haven't been really successful as a community in telling our story. And so that's something that we're also working really hard at, is being able to communicate that Houston is a destination for innovation, not a flyover city, to our limited partners, to our network of national VCs and beyond. So we're working really hard to make sure that our story is being told in the proper way. And that way we have even more engagement. And that's what we're looking for to grow the ecosystem.
That's great. Well, tell me a little bit about HX Venture Fund, and what is a fund of funds, and why is it important to solving this puzzle?
Sure. I'll take a stab and you can finish me off. But so a fund of funds is unique because it commingles capital from, in our case, predominantly corporations, endowments, and foundations, and then invests that capital in the best venture funds that fit the strategy. Those venture funds then in turn deploy the capital, cool the capital down, and invest it in startups. So you have a situation where one of our fund of funds invests in, say, 12 to 15 venture funds, each of those funds in turn investing in about 20 underlying portfolio companies.
Some here and some in other places, basically.
Yes, all over. And on a look-through basis, what you end up is with a basket of about 300 to 500 private companies, all venture-backed by, we believe, superior venture capitalists, and therefore on a faster trajectory than the average company. And our goal is that some of that capital finds root here in Houston founders. Now, the secret sauce to this model is important, and that is that we don't require our venture capitalists to invest here, because the best venture capitalists won't take conditions, right? And so it doesn't work unless you invest in only the best, which we do. And then we must align the investment strategy of those venture capitalists with what we have to offer here. So what we mean by that from a portfolio construction point of view is we look at the total fund and say, gosh, Houston is made of great software innovation, great life science innovation, great energy transition related innovation. So what we're going to do is take our fund of funds and divide the capital across those three verticals, predominantly in early stage, some in growth equity, and then invest it in funds that we believe will end up investing here in Houston. And the great news is that's already happened thanks to Aleece's great work.
And I think that's what differentiates our fund of funds business model is the activation component. We kind of consider ourselves a fund of funds kind of 3.0, if you will, because it's very unique, I think, our activation strategy. And
what does activation mean?
Yes, and really what that means for us is what I'm doing on a daily basis is I'm interacting with our limited partners that are the majority of really large global corporations that have a significant presence here in Houston, like LyondellBasell, Waste Management, NRG, Houston Methodist. We have many others that are extremely innovative and have very strategic, innovative roadmaps. So getting to know their strategies very well, our network of venture capital partners. So not only those that we invest with, but those outside of the portfolio here in Houston that we know are keen on engaging with the Houston ecosystem, and then all of the different founders here, and building relationships where I see synergies aligning and making those introductions that I think will be meaningful. And so for founders, that means engagement in many different forms. Those seeking sources of capital, we're kind of like the easy button to Houston deal flow for our VCs. So pairing up founders who are raising. And then with our limited partners, engaging in a number of ways as well, whether that be through potential pilot programs, customer relationships, maybe even a direct investment or an acquisition later on the road. It really means just so much opportunity for the founders here and for our corporates and our investor relationships as well. And it's just a really great way to help add that acumen and that capital and expertise that we're looking for to really scale the Houston ecosystem.
So if I'm a founder in Houston and I want to hit the easy button,
yes,
what do I do?
Well, you find me. Well, it's very easy to find me, and people are doing it on a daily basis.
Okay. I reach out through LinkedIn.
Reach out through LinkedIn. My email is on our website, hxventurefund.com. And then, we have many events that we're promoting. We have our Engage VC events that we promote on a monthly basis where we bring in one venture capital firm that we know is super interested in Houston. And it's a free event. We usually hold it at the Ion. We start off with an hour of fireside chats. There's networking, and then we get to really understand the investment thesis from the visiting venture capitalists, and then a full day of one-on-ones. So every month, I open up a form for all founders to fill out to be considered for one-on-ones with our visiting VCs. That's a great way to engage with them. And that opportunity is, of course, on a monthly basis. And then, of course, Venture Houston is kind of Engage VC on steroids, where we're bringing in 70 plus VCs from across the nation. I'm inviting, of course, everyone in Houston and the ecosystem to engage. And what we're hoping to do is create meaningful interactions that lead to really impactful deals or, other types of outcomes that are meaningful for each party.
Okay. I do want to hear more about Venture Houston, but before I get there, so this Engage VC meeting happens on a monthly basis at the Ion, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So.
Except I will say when we're planning Venture Houston, which is right now in these summer months.
Well, let's talk about Venture Houston. So why did it start? What's the history behind Venture Houston?
It was just our ideation around how do we really move the needle here in Houston.
Our being HS Venture Fund?
HX Venture Fund in combination with our limited partners and stakeholders, I would say. Mm-hmm. The decision was ours, but we we formed that idea to say, how do we move the needle for all of us?
And this was 3 years ago, right?
This was 3 years ago. It was actually, our first event was during COVID. And we said, well, COVID's hit, but we'd already started planning. How do we take the three legs of our stool, which is corporate limited partners, venture funds, and founders, and bring them together in meaningful collisions that create outcomes? And at the end of the day, we only measure the KPIs, right? The real outcomes. We're very outcome driven, but that we believe is the path to get there. And opportunistically, that's always happening, but we wanted to be catalytic in our approach. And that requires a big many-to-many. At the heart of that is keynoting these conferences with people that everybody knows, but who most people haven't heard from yet on the topic. So the first time, Steve Case. We all know Steve Case is the founder of AOL. What not everybody knows about Steve Case is the fact that he is also the GP of Revolution Ventures, which is one of our investments, and his focus on the rise of the rest is genuine, heartfelt, and important to the Houston ecosystem. So he was a perfect start for us. Second time, everybody knows Gwyneth Paltrow. What they don't know about Gwyneth Paltrow is in the founding of Goop and in forming venture capital a venture capital relationship alongside Greycroft, that she has been helpful in moving that entire ecosystem. And as we said before, using the power of media in that ecosystem, what they're great at, to move them forward. This year, we want to do the same again, but now pivoting towards the energy transition as a theme. Now we have Carmichael Roberts, who is the chairman of the investment committee for Breakthrough Energy, arguably, the most prominent venture fund that's changing the planet in the energy transition and all things related to the energy transition. And sitting side by side, Reggie DeRoche, the president of Rice, of course. I can't imagine a better stage to bring us together on the intersection of digitalization and decarbonization. So that's what I'm still not sure what we're going to do next year, but you can see how our thinking progresses.
Well, you want to iterate and improve year after year. I mean, of course, we've attended the previous two events. Looking forward to the third one, which actually is going to come out after this, when this airs. So unlike other things that are in history, but it's September 6th.
September 7th. And it's at Studi Concert Hall, Rice University, yes. Okay. The 6th, we are holding an event, Capital Connect event. And so, Sandy just touched on kind of the evolution of Venture Houston thematically, but something that remains consistent to this event each year is our objective of wanting to convene investors, founders, and corporate innovators in a very thoughtful and meaningful way. So on September 6th, we're actually holding our Capital Connect event alongside Halliburton Labs and Lilly Labs and Rice Alliance. And what that is doing is creating these intentional collisions by having an application process, which just recently closed, but we have about 97 startups, I believe, that just applied to be considered with one-on-ones, pitch sessions, and just kind of general networking with our investor community. We have good number of investors attending as well. And so very pleased with that level of interaction that we're able to curate. And then, of course, on September 7th, we'll be able to create several breaks throughout the day. And of course, our happy hour at the end of the day that will also achieve those objectives of creating those really organic, meaningful collisions.
And this is open, not just to, like you said, it's all the categories, all three of the tripod, right? So if you're a founder, you're an investor.
Totally.
You can go to Venture Houston.
And honestly, anyone interested in participating in the tech ecosystem. So we have a number of SDOs, students, and service providers attending as well. So really it's open to all who are interested in participating in Houston's tech ecosystem.
Including those just learning or even pivoting, looking to pivot their career. So we have a lot of people who are right in this market thinking about finding what they're even more passionate about from where they are today.
Leaving enterprise, taking the...
thinking
taking the
about
red
that
pill.
risk, but wanting to do so in an educated way. This is a great time to listen to a bunch of best practices and meet, approximately 1,000 people here in Houston who have made a shift towards innovation.
Well, and the scale is impressive. I mean, we've attended every year. We're going to attend this year.
Thank you.
But when I was at the show last year, and speaking to Paul O'Brien from MediaTek Ventures, whom you may know, but I was talking about, Austin. Austin's always been viewed as kind of the much farther along in the venture ecosystem, right? And he remarked, well, we couldn't have filled a room like this in Austin with this many people, and how impressive it was that Houston was able to do that. And I was really frankly surprised because of like the impression of really in Austin, where you guys have been doing this for quite a long time, and so there's a lot of momentum in Houston, and kudos
there
to you.
is. And we forget how unique we are. So Austin doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have our corporate base of corporate venture capitalists and corporate innovators. We also have, a really diverse community here that Austin wishes they had. And behind that is, a drive, a need for innovation, in my opinion, that is extraordinary. It's a huge gift that we have. And we are, of course, a city of, 9 million plus people. We have critical mass broadly. So I think we have a lot of the components that will help us drive forward. We're very friendly, of course, with Dallas as well. And our friends at Venture Dallas call us and say, gosh, how did you do that? We want to do that too.
And there's no affiliation, right? I mean, it's
no
just,
affiliation, no affiliation. They're just kind to pass on their compliments, and we plan to help them and they us, because we win as a state, really, I think, and beyond it, as individuals, as a state.
The tide raises all boats.
And I think it's important to note that this year's event, while it does have a lean towards energy transition, Sandy mentioned, it's about decarbonization and digitization. And so even in our Capital Connect event, we have a number of founders not really focused on energy transition that have applied. And we have a number of investors who are generalist investors, not just super focused on climate tech investing. And so this really is a conference for all market segments, all industries, because whether you're a hospital system or a grocery retailer or a SaaS-based company, you're leaving some kind of carbon footprint. And I think it's going to take the community collectively coming together to achieve a lot of the decarb goals that our LPs and others broadly have set, which commonly is known as net zero by 2050. So it's going to take all of us. And really, that's what the event is about. It's not just, a traditional oil and gas type of event by any means. And so just wanted to kind of reiterate that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And I think Sandy was saying that earlier, that there's a lot underneath climate tech. There's a lot underneath, net zero that relates to all industries and all technologies, really.
What I find fascinating, Chris, is when we're at the early part of an innovation curve, our ability to categorize effectively is diminished. And the reason is that the categorization doesn't quite fit. So, for example, when the software wave was beginning, even the terms underneath software were hard to define. When the property tech, prop tech wave started, is this company a B2B SaaS company, or is it a prop tech company, or is it a hard tech company? The answer was yes, it's all three of those things, right? The same thing happens with decarbonization. Decarbonization is typically defined by the customer that you're selling into more than the underlying technology. So when we see the decarbonization wave, we see life science solutions, we see prop tech solutions, we see a B2B SaaS all through this. We see hardware solutions. It's really all of those things. And I think, I'd like to predict that 5 to 10 years from now, the term decarbonization will become so ubiquitous that we will then change our categorizations to more refined words, and it just won't have meaning by itself. So it's true that some people look at that term and say, I'm not sure if that's my kind of company. The answer is it probably is, because that's a very broad term we're using.
Because everybody has to really start addressing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know Houston wants to be a world-class innovation hub, but is anything holding us back from being that? What else has to happen?
I think the LP community is still shifting.
Mm.
It's in the process of shifting. I think we have limited partners who are quite accustomed to oil and gas risk, and it's a different kind of risk around software and venture capital. Obviously, one we believe deeply in and can be highly accretive if done well. So we think that it is an area that Houston will increasingly be paying attention to. But our family offices and our high net worths, as well as our global corporates, our endowments and foundations, are shifting in this direction, and we welcome that shift. I think it can gain steam from here.
It is daunting, right? I mean, technology, and even in the technology space, it can be a challenge even for us, right, that knows a lot about it. But it is
Right.
another reason why we've set up the model the way we have with a venture fund and then a studio, and trying to de-risk and get those LPs more comfortable with investing in this technology, because we're the technology partner there and can help them evaluate it, because they don't understand how to evaluate hardware and software and B2B and SaaS. And, like you said, they're familiar with, say, energy, et cetera, but, they need to kind of transition toward or adding to their portfolio, like, how do we invest in these technologies? Because it's going to start, it's already starting to get into all the other areas with
That's
climate tech,
exactly
et cetera, right? So you're going to have to understand it, and all these little pieces are investment opportunities and solving the bigger problem.
Right.
Well, we're so grateful to you, Soft Tech, and others in this community that are helping us all learn the power of venture capital, because I think we have to move along the risk curve towards venture capital, and we are already doing that. And then we need to bring our founders into that conversation as well, so that they can tell their story to limited partners more effectively. And you're doing that in your studios. I think that's really important work that you're doing for Houston. And then on top of that, we need to continue to bring in these venture capitalists. We just need to keep rinse and repeating. Now, VCs are becoming ever more specialized, right? So there are generalist VCs and specialist VCs. So it is important to continually bring in a high number of venture capitalists, but so that all specializations can be represented as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, to that point, I mean, how can corporations and institutions better collaborate to help build this Houston ecosystem? You have a lot of corporate partners, right? I mean, I know they're doing some, but what else can be done?
Yeah, I think we're trying to do that through our activation model, really trying to plug in our corporate partners with the right local partners here and with our networks broadly, so that we can get them more involved, more engaged, even more knowledgeable in what innovations are coming out of Houston and broadly, so that they can further their roadmaps and continue to do the good work that they're doing as well.
I have two specific suggestions on that point. One, I think corporations can continue to build out their venture capital teams, and build out those processes that allow for corporate venture capital to find roots in innovation. And number two, I think our local global corporates should help us by creating processes that seek out Houston-based founders. We're certainly doing that with our limited partners that are in the global corporate community here in Houston, and other global organizations, if they took a moment to look first in their backyard and then beyond, still holding the bar to the best in the world, because that's what it takes. But the best in the world sometimes is right under your nose.
Tell me what we shouldn't miss at this event. What are some of the highlights?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're excited. We're going to be holding on September 6th what we call our Capital Connect event. And that is an event that we've invited all of Houston's founders to apply for. Our applications just closed, as well as the local investors and investors across the nation that we've been inviting to the conference to attend. And really what that is a meaningful way for investors and founders to connect one-on-one, in group pitch sessions, or just informal networking. And we've been partnering hard alongside of Halliburton Labs, Lilly Labs, and Rice University to make that event happen. That's going to be on September 6th at the Brockman Hall on Rice University's campus. And then on September 7th is the big show, Venture Houston, held at Studi Concert Hall, also on Rice University campus, just directly across the plaza from Brockman. That's going to be a full day of innovation. So Sandy had mentioned that keynoting that event will be Carmichael Roberts and President DeRoche. But we have a full day of really amazing panels and speakers. So, for instance, we have Sophie Purdom, who is the managing partner of Planeteer Capital and also the author of one of the most widely read newsletters in the energy transition space, CTVC newsletter coming in. We have CEO of Camden Property Trust and also the chairman of the Port of Houston Authority, Rick Campo, speaking. So many. Gaurav Chakrabarti from Solugen. Of course, we have some fantastic Houston founders coming in.
Tim Latimer.
Tim Latimer from Furbo, Trevor Best from Syzygy, Moji Karimi from Cemvita. So really those founders that have been able to scale here in Houston to really showcase why Houston is a destination for innovation. And then we have several networking breaks throughout the day, capping off with our happy hour to celebrate and also have those really meaningful conversations. So truly a full day. And that's September 7th. So super excited.
So I've got my Benjamin $100 socks on here for honor of Venture Houston. Thanks for coming on the show. I have something for both of you here.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Soft Tech Bling. Yay.
Whoa.
And some socks in there too.
Hey,
so,
awesome.
Soft Tech
Thank
socks.
you.
Yeah,
So,
Soft Tech
space socks. So
Appreciate that.
thanks for coming on, sharing what a fund is, and really looking forward to seeing both of you at Venture Houston.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You really honor us with your time and attention.
Yes.
Thank you.